Hey everyone, so we're on to the next chapter. I would recap, but I don't remember and I don't care. But I think they were at the hospital. Okay, chapter 15. I'll say this for Cole. He's flexible and functions well under pressure. Not a letter of recommendation I'd be happy to write, considering what kind of people hire that type, but true all the same. We drove around the block and parked right behind the SUV. Come to my side and open the door, I said, feeling the blood drain from my face. He's nearly here. Already? I didn't need to reply. Cole was already out of the car. Moments later, he opened my door. Undo my seatbelt and take your time about it, I said, that terrible feeling of imbalance momentarily blurring my vision. Something shook me at the core, as if the Ohio River had suddenly reversed course, or all the grass in Brown Stadium had suddenly burst into flames. We have to meet them near the door, I said. Be loud, be scared, make a major scene, make sure something happens so I can touch him. He nodded. Ready? I hoped I wouldn't puke on Cole's nifty velour jogging suit. I nodded. He pulled me out of the car and helped me toward the door. My blood seemed to jump in my veins, a warning so dire I would have turned to run if Cole hadn't been holding on to me. How does your blood jump in your veins? That's just weird. There they are, he said. I raised my head, forcing my eyes to team up. Show me the scene. What? I raised my head, forcing my eyes to team up. Show me the scene. That sentence makes no fucking sense. The men, a couple of clones of the gatekeepers Vale and I had dealt with last night, had reached the first set of automatic doors. One pushed the wheelchair, the other strode beside it. Derek slumped inside it, pale and tired-looking, wearing a black turtleneck and white jeans. His head was tilted to one side, as if to protect the bandaged area that reminded me forcefully of my last night's confrontation with his attacker. Then I realized he was watching his reflection in the glass doors. Smoke and mirrors, I murmured. What? Now, make it loud. He raised his voice. It's all right, honey. He clutched at me, gave my arm a comforting pat, and stepped us forward. We'd almost reached the entry doors. He waited until Derek and his entourage emerged. Don't pass out on me. It'll be okay. I obliged and sighed, keeping one hand firm on the back of his jacket. It took an effort not to hit my knees. All I wanted was to puke until my stomach was dry as an AA meeting. Look, honey, a wheelchair. Cole maneuvered us into Derek's path, blocking his way. You're leaving, right? He asked them. We need the chair, man. My wife's really sick. Get out of the way, growled one of the goons. He shoved Cole backward, and I let go of him. This time I did fall, right into Derek's lap. I filled my hands and managed to slap the bug onto the uninjured side of his neck. So sick, I muttered. Derek shoved me off his lap, leaving me in a crumpled heap. I considered just staying there. Hell, I was 2 yards from a hospital. Eventually somebody would discover me here, tuck me into a nice clean bed, maybe pump me full of tranquilizers. I could legitimately sleep for a week. Fortunately, the person who hauled me off my butt was Cole. My hospital fantasy had barely played itself out before he'd strapped me back into the Mercedes. Actually, the seat felt even better than my fantasy bed. Love those luxury models. I managed to focus on the road as Cole pulled away from the hospital entrance. The SUV was probably 20 yards ahead of us and gaining. How close do we need to follow? Cole asked. I tried to remember what Bergman had told me about receiving distance. They drew further ahead of us, and as my nausea diminished, my brain kicked in, just close enough to keep them in sight. We fell further behind, and I sat up straighter, wiped the sweat off my upper lip, ditched the wig and the beret. Feeling better? Cole asked, cocked a raised eyebrow in my direction. Much. That wasn't an act, was it? I shook my head. There's something so far off about that man that every time I get near him I feel like the earth's about to break orbit. Cole absorbed my reply with a quiet attention. How come I didn't feel it? I shrugged. I've become what you might call supersensitive since Bill took my blood last night, and I think this reaction is part of it. Then we better find out what he's up to. Are you hearing anything yet? No talking. Kind of a steady thrumming sound. Knowing Bergman, this thing is so fine-tuned I'll be able to hear Derek's pulse. But his conversation will sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, wah, wah. Who's Bergman? I held up a finger. Someone's talking, I whispered. I don't think I did that properly, but I don't care. I don't even like Charlie Brown. I really don't. The guy's depressed. He needs help. Hassan isn't too happy with you, said one of the guards. His voice was throaty and strained, probably lined with decades of nicotine buildup. I immediately dubbed him the Marble Man. I was just following orders. It was Derek, whining. It's not my fault somebody decided to play superhero. You don't think it'll hurt my chances, do you? Hassan promised to put me in a movie as soon as this all was over with. I'm sure you're fine. Who interfered with the experiment? A girl with red hair and a man with a foreign accent. He had a cane. Said his name was Jeremy. I don't remember anything more about her. Well, between them, they managed to smoke Jonathan and both your victims. Jonathan must have been the doorman. It seems strange to think of Boris and Svetlana as Steele's victims, but that had been her take on the situation last night as well. The final experiment, my mind whispered, transferring the mutated virus from human to vampire. What did that have to do with the vamp? What did it have to do with the virus? We'll try out Dagan's ritualist tomorrow. The senator is even coming, chattered the Marlborough man. How should I know that? Asked Derek. I just do what he tells me, and he never tells me more. Well, here's what he's telling you now, said the other guard, his voice hard and sharp as an axe blade. A loud scraping sound drowned out part of Axe's message. Derek must have scratched his neck or else gulped loudly, because all I heard was, "Undead tonight, and you're snagging him another vampire so he can finish his test." Tonight? The whine had re-entered Derek's voice. I suspected it never stepped far aside. I've lost so much blood. Surely tomorrow will be too late, snapped Marvel Man. Again the interference kept me from getting the complete reply. Afterward? Said Derek. Leave them to us, said Axe. We'll make sure of it. The third time was the charm for the bad guys. The sound that had kept parts of their conversation from me resumed in earnest, and when it finished I couldn't hear anything more. Derek had killed the bug. I looked at my watch. More time had passed than I realized. Time enough at least to ensure that I'd fully recover for my next meeting. What did they say? Asked Cole. I hesitated, but he was already in it to his neck, so I told him what I knew. That ritual is going to be the key, I said. If the senator's coming, so are the rest of the bigwigs. How do you know? Dude, that's just how politicians operate. It's going to be such a pleasure putting a bolt through your shriveled little heart, Senator. Are you busy for the next hour? I asked. Not really. Then let's chase another lead. Vale knows a woman who might be able to decipher those glyphs you drew for me. Excellent. I gave him the address, and Cole took the next left, heading us away from Derek and his companions. At least now I knew what disturbed my balance every time I got close to the man. The virus he carried must be as lethal as Aiden and Hassan had advertised. Though why those two thought it needed to become a vampire cocktail I could not fathom. Maybe Cassandra could give us some insight into the whole situation. Chapter 16. Cassandra's Pure Natural was a tiny brick storefront in a predominantly Cuban neighborhood. Bins of fresh apples, oranges, and grapefruit sat on the sidewalk beside the door, which was equipped with the most soothing set of chimes it ever set off. Inside the walls and aisles carried a surprisingly wide selection of spices, herbs, vitamins, and natural remedies for everything from erectile dysfunction to the common cold. I asked the cashier, a petite old lady with gleaming white teeth and blinding red hair, where we could find Cassandra. She directed us to the back of the store, where shelves full of fresh baked breads, rolls, and sugar-free desserts made my stomach growl. As soon as Cole caught sight of Cassandra, he yanked off his glasses, spat out his fake teeth, and wrapped them both in his fishing hat, which went into the waistband of his sweats. Literally. He'd probably have to cut the lure to separate them. But at the moment he seemed pretty oblivious. All his concentration centered on Cassandra as she added more bran muffins to a glass case that already contained a full load of fiber-filled goodies for folks forced to make irregularity a priority. A slender beauty with black velvet skin and hair that fell in braids to her waist, Cassandra moved with the grace of a dancer. She wore a canary-yellow blouse, red-flowered skirt, beaded moccasins, and enough gold jewelry to keep eBay shoppers bidding for weeks. "How may I help you?" she asked in an accent that made my Midwestern drawl sound pale and asexual. "My name is Lucia Robinson," I said. "This is my friend Cole Beaumont." He nodded, doing a nice job of keeping his drool in check. We need a translation." She nodded. "I assume you heard of me through a mutual acquaintance?" "Yes, you would probably know him as Vale." Instant sympathy filled her warm brown eyes, but all she said was, "Yes, I remember him." She leaned aside, caught the cashier's eye, and said, "We're going upstairs, Rita." "To us," she said. "Follow me, please." Cole managed to keep his tongue from rolling out onto the stairs as we trailed Cassandra's swinging hips to the second floor. What random-ass details to notice. I don't notice women's swinging hips. It made me laugh inwardly to see him smitten, as it were, but I was glad I had seen the show. It confirmed my feelings for him. I might love him someday, but never in the way I loved Matt. Never in the way I could, maybe, if I found the guts, love Vale. When we reached the landing at the top of the stairs, I was surprised to find the 3 doors that opened to it, open. The one to our left revealed an apartment, living room, and kitchen. A bathroom stood directly in front of us, and a gypsy den sat on our right. That's where Cassandra led us, into a large room, the walls of which were covered in silky materials that ranged from blood-red solids to dark gold prints. The new colors I saw within those familiar shades pleased my eye and my spirit. Somehow, despite the fringed pillows on the black couches and the multitude of candles on the large central table, the room maintained an exotic dignity. 4 dark wooden chairs with more curlicues than Shirley Temple sat around the table, which might have been crafted soon after Vale's transformation. Cassandra sank into one of the chairs and motioned for us to join her. I sense I would be entertaining 3 visitors today, she said, her voice as satiny as well as the wall coverings. Are you expecting another? Actually, yes, we are meeting a friend here. He should be arriving any time now, I said. Cassandra nodded, the golden studs that lined her ears shining with reflected light. Rita will send him up when he arrives. Would you like to show me what you need translated? I pulled the paper Cole had traced the symbols on out of my front pocket. I took care not to touch her as I handed it to her. Bill might need the services of a seer, but I preferred to leave my future blank. My new senses told me that if Cassandra touched me, she would tell me things I didn't want to hear. I was inclined to believe them. I never doubted Cassandra's abilities. Charlatans don't stay in the biz long when vamps join their clientele. But even if I had come into thinking this, thinking Cassandra's upstairs gig was a fraud, her reaction to the symbols would have convinced me otherwise. She dropped the note onto the table in front of her as if she'd been burned. Her face tightened into a mask of fear, and the soul behind her eyes cringed like a spectre at the Holocaust Museum. I didn't know she could see souls. What? Where did you see this? She asked, pointing a wavering finger at the symbols and making sure she didn't touch them. They had been carved into a dead body, Cole told her. Actually, 2 dead bodies on 2 separate occasions. Cassandra fingered a crucifix at her neck and muttered under her breath in, well, oddly enough, it sounded like Latin. What are you saying? Cole asked. She looked at him grimly. A prayer for your protection. Cole said, Why do we need God's protection in this, Cassandra? These symbols, she said, are powerful runes designed to trap the soul after death to keep it from ascending. I recalled the scene in the restaurant, when Charlie's beautiful blue soul went flying into the wild blue yonder. What if it had remained stuck here, straining to be free? That image made me flinch. Cole shook his head. How is that possible? He asked. Cassandra made a visible effort to pull herself together. When people die violently, their souls do not immediately break free, she explained. During that short delay, the soul can be contained inside the body by binding these runes on the skin around the death wound. So, I can't believe I'm saying this. Then what do you have? Zombies? That is a possibility. Cassandra looked as revolted as I felt. Another explanation is that a rail, or hell servant, trapped the soul until his master could arrive to eat it. I couldn't help it. My mind suddenly supplied a picture of red-skinned horned demon picking its teeth with a purple claw as the waiter cleared the dishes from its table. How was the soul? The waiter asked. Not bad with butter and lemon, the demon replied. In fact, I'd say it was finger-licking good. I know. Not funny. No, it's not. Not at all. Aside from the obvious biblical explanations, I said, why would a demon eat souls? Cassandra shuddered. For the fun of it, she suggested. Or perhaps because it had been called to do so by a vengeance-minded human who was willing to pay the price. Great, that's what I need right now. It's not enough that I have to stop a mega-terrorist from spreading some god-awful virus. Now I get to chase down a psychotic netherworlder with the munchies, too. There is a third possibility, Cassandra said. What is it? Demons are not the only monsters who eat souls. She nodded at the symbols Cole had drawn. The woman who taught me this language told me a story once of an evil emperor named Teket Dirani, who made it his passion to rule not only this world but all the worlds beyond this one. He summoned a carrion to help him. What's a carrion? Asked Cole. Cassandra started to look ill as she described something that sounded more like a George Lucas creation than the real deal. It is a beast built for destruction. Its presence can herald a plague or a nuclear meltdown, and it can rip through the walls that divide universes like a wrecking ball. Sure sounds like a demon to me, Cole murmured. Not at all. It will destroy for any cause, good or evil. It is, like a djinn, at the mercy of his master's whims. Only genies don't scarf down somebody's essence every morning for breakfast, I pointed out. So how do you master something like that, I wondered. How do you beat it? Cassandra didn't realize I was waxing rhetorical. You control it with food, she said. Souls, to be specific. Likewise, you might be able to beat it by starving it. So is that how the Emperor's carrion died? Oh, carrion didn't die, Cassandra said earnestly. They simply become weak enough to bind. Somehow I didn't think she meant bind as in, Yo, Henry, go get me some rope. Bind how? I asked, feeling suddenly exhausted. I eyed one of the couches speculatively. How offended would Cassandra be if a perfect stranger collapsed there for, say 3 days, more or less? According to the legend, a powerful mage bound the carrion by making her forget her own name. That must have been a major bump on the head. Indeed, Cassandra agreed. It would take more than a mild concussion to forget the name, Tor Aldagan. Dun dun dun. I guess we'll wait to get that information tomorrow. Isn't it all convenient how everything is just, linked so conveniently?